All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for October 26, 2023. It is 4 o'clock and all the committee members I know of that are coming are here. So we'll go ahead and get started. We have 3 items on the agenda this afternoon. Are we doing transit first or? Is this just-
Yeah, they just have it loaded up, I think.
Our first item, as usual, is the public transit ridership report, or just the general public transit report. And as a reminder, we get this report every month in this committee from city staff, and we have a discussion about what's going on in public transit in Norman. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have suggestions, if you have feedback you'd like to provide us, or if it's just of general interest to you, this is the committee where we talk about it every month. So we'll go ahead and get started. Taylor's here. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. It's been a busy couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, actually, today we had the ribbon cutting on the transit center facility at 320 East Comanche. And then not 2 weeks ago, but Monday on October 16th, we started the service change with the route changes and on operating out of that facility. So we're not quite 2 weeks into the new routes, but yeah, it's been busy for operations, and we've definitely been fielding calls and trying to make sure that people know how to navigate the new routes. I appreciate Mr. Lamar Hammond being here. He's our Embark Norman operations specialist and has really been fielding a lot of that. Just making sure the drivers, while they had training, sometimes we need tweaking here and there. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. And outside of the obvious, like the transit center and the route changes, we're still busy working on grants and approving grants and programming the grant funds that we've been awarded, applying for ACOG grants. This is kind of the busy season, it seems, for grant applications. So we've gone to council a few times with resolutions for support for those applications, and we appreciate the support on those for transit and other activities in the city. I'm excited that our fleet maintenance and vehicle procurement section is getting a little slimmer as we get vehicles in, accept them, and give you kind of a final update on them. We're going to start taking those off the list. The one this month that we took off the list was the 5 CNG 35-foot Gillig buses that we received last couple months. We've got them in the service, and we've decommissioned or working on decommissioning the 5 older units. So it's very exciting for us to have 5 new vehicles. That'll be 7, including the 2 electric buses we received earlier this year. And then we have still the 5 Ford Transits coming for the paratransit service. And we actually have 3 new ADA minivans on site for the paratransit service. So
I got an email about asking about the status of those vans.
Well, those are separate from even these.
Okay,
So
those are, okay.
we have 3 ADA Chrysler Pacifica minivans on site specifically for the paratransit service, and then the Ford Transit vans again are another procurement. Those 2 are the additional procurement we did for the possible mobile crisis units. So, yeah, lots of vehicles coming in. That's good news for us. We've been waiting for them for a long time.
So how many do we have left that are left over from the OU fleet?
Well, we'll have about 17 that we'll get, so it'll be about 10. But we have another 6 in grant money that we need to just get going on the ordering. We're trying to get through this wave of getting the vehicles, and we'll get those ordered. So we'll not have very many left by probably end of next year.
Yeah, that's great. That is amazing progress, actually, because we're
Yeah.
thinking how we're going to replace 27 buses. So that's great.
Yeah, it was scary times 4 years ago, but
Yes.
we've made a lot of progress with the support of council and the community. We couldn't go after those grant applications without your support and the local match, so we appreciate that. Moving to the performance report, the ridership numbers, September was another good month for our ridership. We had just over 35,000 rides for the entire Embark Norman system. Compared to last September, it was about 24,000, so it was about 11,000 passenger increase, and the average total daily ridership was 1,400 again, which is very healthy for a system our size, and increased almost 50% from last September. So very good ridership numbers. The performance report for next month will look a little different as we try to navigate how to show you the change with the route changes. It's not going to be completely one-to-one because obviously Route 110 isn't just been tweaked, it's been modified greatly. So we'll do our best to navigate that and try to show you meaningful data on the route changes. But we're talking through that and how we're going to update this report as we speak. Just like every month, there's a lot of data. I want to skip over to the Norman On Demand report. We made some changes since last month that council requested. Still the same service profile, hours, and pricing, just to keep that in front of everybody's mind. On our key performance indicator measures or KPIs that we identified in the RFP, we're still within the average walking distance. On average, it's about 0.08 miles that people have to walk. Maximum walking distance is a little higher than we'd like, but that probably is during peak times whenever we're trying to coordinate rides as much as possible. Average wait time is higher than we wanted, but again, we're still tweaking the system. Our operator, VIA, is doing their best to navigate getting additional drivers and making sure that the shifts are covered. And then the percentage of ride requests completed is still under the amount that, within the 20-minute wait time is still under what we'd like. But again, we're about 2.5 months in, or probably just over 2 months. So we're still figuring out the best way to operate. They're still identifying any tweaks they can make to the system to make it more efficient. So we're monitoring that closely as we already ramp up to next budget year so we can make some decisions on where we want this program to go next year. So on the second page, we want to go over the ridership real quick. In September alone, we had 2,223 passengers at 1,278 trips. So we had multiple people riding on those trips, which gets to the number of passengers. The service to date number doesn't go up a lot because it includes August, which only started on August 21st. So that's a little bit of an asterisk there. And then I think it was Councilmember Schuler asked for the number of wheelchair accessible vehicle trips requested, and we're showing it was 9 in September and then 3 in August. So for a total of 12 so far. There's other metrics in there. The rider experience, we're still having a high ride rating, service to date, and then ride duration, ride distance is still fairly, well, it's not, we're not measuring against anything, but just things for council and for staff to consider as we look at the service and if we want to modify it in the future. And then we anticipate this will slow down, but we've had 2,000 apps created. We have about 1,000 active accounts where they've at least had requested one ride. With one completed ride, we have 650 accounts, and then with at least 2 rides completed, we have 420. So you can see how that kind of funnels down to those that are kind of truly using the system in our community. With that, I'll take any questions you guys might have about either the fixed route, paratransit, or our on-demand service.
Councilor Grant.
I was wondering, I got something from a constituent that was curious about Ed Noble part of town, like the very end of it. I looked at the bus route, it's kind of at the, closer to Main Street is the stop. But they were curious why it didn't go all the way down there because there are jobs there and people with disabilities. Would they, on demand, probably wouldn't help with somebody who had like regular job hours though.
No, it's the late night service Monday through Saturday, and then Sunday during the day. And I don't think at this time the zone even covers Ed Noble. I think it stops at generally on the west side I-35. So Norman On Demand, because of the hours and then the zone, probably wouldn't be able to help that area right now.
So kind of make Ed Noble a dead zone for like if people are getting around to do shopping, I guess, in that part of it. if they're not able to really, well, I mean, some of them will be able to walk from the bus station to, or the bus stop to the other parts, but, okay. So how would a citizen put an input that they wanted, like, would you take number of requests for route service over there into consideration as you move forward?
Yeah, we constantly take feedback from either council members or citizens directly or citizens through council members. So we'd be happy to take that, and we're trying to keep it compiled so that way when we do consider changing service, adding service, we can have that as backup information to, help us understand where we might need to make changes in the future.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anytime you guys get anything, please forward it to us so we can keep track of that.
I would be interested in seeing what it would take to maybe expand the service boundary to specific areas, like to Edna Parkway specifically. It doesn't go north of Robinson currently, does it?
It has a couple of pockets, so it comes up to the in front of the airport area, YMCA, and then it kind of snakes 24th up to the Healthplex, so we could service
It does
that.
go to the health place.
Yeah.
So maybe Edna Parkway, maybe Robinson Crossing, or any other commercial areas that we think of that are maybe right on the edge of the boundary. Yeah, that's what I was
Are
trying to
you
put there.
considering during this current service year, or for if we continue the
Potentially, well,
service?
maybe depending on just what would it cost for it to just go slightly over to catch Edna Parkway.
Okay.
Yeah. During this pilot program, if that's possible.
Okay. We can ask the operator via
Yeah,
for
other areas
that
that you
information.
think of that it's not going yet.
Still within the same hours, just of the current operation
Yeah.
for now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from either of you? Okay.
Well, I appreciate you guys' time. Again, anytime you guys have questions about the service, please reach out.
Absolutely. I appreciate the update on that. Looking forward to more information next month, and ways that we can continue to improve it. It's great to see the ridership continues to go up. Be interesting to see how that reflects with changes in the routes. And how is the transit center actually functioning as far as just new ways for the drivers to get in and out, and just the general flow and function?
Yeah, operationally, I think we had a lot of training on it. I think it's worked out pretty well for the buses to navigate. We love the interior space. We've gotten a lot of compliments from passengers on the change, just having a space inside, and then the outdoor space is a little bit of an upgrade too, just having a covered outdoor space with the awning plus the shade structure, the covered area out front. So I think it's working out pretty well. Lamar, would you have anything else to add about the?
Pretty much what I got from a lot of our ridership is definitely the covering from the weather elements. Last few days we've had the rain. They've been able to stay dry for the most part. Even in the middle where we have our benches at, few of them sat there, feel comfortable. So the indoor facility is definitely a plus. We try to keep it clean and available for them to have. So a lot of positive remarks.
And the drivers, how are they?
The drivers are the same. We kind of got little issues with our personal bathrooms, but we'll work on that. But outside of that, the drivers are definitely satisfied with the facility. The routes are running very well, on time, in and out of the transit center. No issues with the Highland truck system.
Perfect.
So it's perfect. Right now, it's running very smooth.
Okay.
That's great.
Very good. I appreciate that, and look forward to keeping track of how that's working out too as we go along. And especially with the Highland. It's one of the main things I kind of worried about was how the buses would work with the Highland trucks that are going through there pretty often as well. So thank you very much.
And it sounds like a lot, you're talking about big buses coming in all the time, but we're really talking every 30 minutes, right?
Right.
So that's what I have to remind people is there's only going to be those conflicts every 30 minutes, and you have to have those vehicles, actively going at the same time. So it's not going to happen very often that there's a big
Well,
conflict.
and the way you set it up where they're just making a slight loop in the alleyway, they're not in the alleyway
Right.
but for a second or two. So
Exactly.
yeah, so anyway, okay. If that's it, then we'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor, appreciate it. On the agenda is a discussion regarding the flood warning system report. We have someone from staff here with a presentation, it looks like.
Thank you. I'm Jason Murphy. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager, in case anybody didn't know. I'm going to talk a little bit about the flood warning system. With me today, I've got a couple personnel from Meshach and Associates. Brandon Claiborne is here in the back. He's the CEO of Meshach. David Key, who's been the technical lead for this project with ESP. ESP has developed these flood warning systems. They start with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg system, if you've heard of it, but they've kind of set, honestly, a standard nationwide for developing these flood warning systems, have a lot of expertise in that. And then we also have Harris Wilson, who is here, who's our local Meshach project lead. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we need a flood warning system, how we got here. And then Brandon and David will really kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the scoping project that was recently completed and what the system's going to look like. So, the question, why does Norman need a flood warning system? Well, for anybody who lives in Norman, this probably pretty apparent why we need one. Anytime that we have any rain scheduled anywhere, any significant amount, every news station is down here waiting on Norman to flood. And that's kind of become, like I said, we expect it all the time. In these pictures, if you look, this is back from the 2015 flooding event. And in particular, what I wanted to point out is when we have Rock Creek Road and 72nd Avenue Northwest, that's completely underwater, all the way over to 72nd Avenue Northeast. So, all the way out Ward 5, and then obviously here at Andrews Park, in Core Norman. So flooding isn't something that's isolated to any one part of Norman or whatever. It is a citywide problem. So we kind of got into this, a few years ago, and 2015 is kind of what led into an understanding how our system works. To be honest, right now, whenever flooding occurs in the city, we're not very efficient at being able to identify where the flooding problems are and being able to close roads and things like that. And basically what happens when we start getting rain, we kind of have a list of the usual suspects. And I've got stormwater staff, street staff, traffic staff that's running all over the city. We're getting calls in from dispatch and things like that, but we're playing more whack-a-mole than really being able to get ahead of and be proactive in addressing flooding concerns in the city. And a lot of times, we don't know that a road's flooded till we have some, a vehicle stranded, that's in the floodwaters, and we're having to perform rescue operations and that sort of thing. So part of the idea with a flood warning system is really to get a system of gauges installed citywide that will be able to see what's happening in these rivers in real time. And we've already started developing in the city of Norman the Emergency Operations Center, the new Traffic Management Center. So we've already got the infrastructure built, and we've put all the time and effort and money into building something that the flood warning system will be able to feed into directly, so that we can get better with getting the right people into the right places at any given time during a storm event. The other really good thing, aside from the Traffic Management Center and the ECOC, is in the process of scoping, we've met with all the stakeholders, and that included, police, fire, emergency management. Tiffany obviously set in, and we talked about how this would even tie into our existing RAVE system. So the real-time monitoring data would be available, and they'll get into more of the details on that. I don't want to steal their thunder, but it will tie in so individuals could actually go in and sign up for alerts for their specific area. For instance, if you live on Lahoma Street, once Imhoff Creek reaches a threshold, you'll get that alert so that you know that, hey, I probably need to get my car out of here before it's flooded or before I get stranded here in floodwaters and that kind of thing. And again, these pictures, this is back from 2015, again, just kind of, Norman's 191 square miles. We have a huge footprint that we've got to see. At one point during the 2015 flood, we had 23 different road closings, you know, whether it was power lines down, road flooded, etc. And this doesn't actually even cover like the things that we know happen here in Core Norman, that happened on Main Street, on Boyd, on Lahoma and Flood. So having some sort of system that can kind of guide our efforts and make sure that we're using our personnel more effectively is kind of what we're going for. And then the other reason, back to this, so the 2015 flood, I was actually in a meeting with some of the folks from OU and the National Weather Center and NOAA, and they were talking about what's happening with climate. We're expected to have bigger, heavier rainfalls, like, you know, we're looking at up, you know, close to a 10% increase in the number of major flood events that we're looking at, you know, moving into the future. So again, these are all really good reasons why this is such a good thing for us moving forward. Other than that, here's kind of where we've been in terms of starting this. We got the BRIC grant to do the scoping. And Meshach and Associates, along with ESP, performed that scoping project. Y'all approved that grant and that contract last year. They brought us the result of that scoping project in July. And at this point, what we're doing, y'all also, council approved a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign some grant applications. What we're working on right now, since y'all have done that, on the 14th, you'll actually see one of the agenda items should be a contract amendment for the scoping project for $7,500 to add grant services for Meshach to apply for a FEMA BRIC grant to be able to fund the implementation of this flood warning system. In addition, we also, OU had approached the city and we applied for a SMART grant through the US DOT. In conjunction with OU, that would potentially fund this as well as a few other things. There's some different traffic aspects that would be tied into that grant as well. So all of that being said, we're doing our best to find the money. So whenever you see these coming down, we wanted you to be aware of what it was that we were asking for and why, and what we'd be getting for our money in that particular situation. But with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Brandon and David and let them kind of take you through what we did with the scoping project and what it looks like.
I'll just stay seated.
Okay.
Hi, my name's David Key, and I'm going to walk you. I probably got more slides than I need, but I want to make sure I respect your time, and so we can have maybe some Q&A about these. But in general, this slide kind of sums up how a flood warning system works. And at the center is that black symbol. The center of the flood warning system is a database that stores information for the sensors out in the field, on the bridges or on the streams, and that's getting real-time measurements every 5 minutes. And the data is transmitted from sensors that maybe Norman may own and any sensors that others own, maybe the Aquarius sensors that you already have or sensors from the U.S. Geological Survey. And that data comes into a database, and then it is supported with a lot of modeling data. And that modeling data gives a real-time representation of where the flooding is happening right now. And so instead of just seeing a chart that shows the river rising, you can see a map that shows where the floodplains are and what's impacted. And that could be buildings, critical infrastructure, roads that are flooded, bridges that are flooded, et cetera, and that's real time. So that's the big picture of it. What drives that data are what we call inundation libraries. And just to keep this really simple, in order to develop inundation libraries, you need sensors in the field. You need telemetry to get that data back rapidly into your database. And then you need pre-developed modeling of those rivers and streams to show that mapping on a website for emergency managers and city staff. With all that together, you've got a real-time flood warning system. My experience goes back to the first flood warning system that we built almost 20 years ago in 2004, and we've been supporting those flood warning system ever since then. I won't bore you with a lot of this, but how do we make these inundation libraries? We develop computer models of these rivers, and then we simulate floods from bank full elevation to the flood of record, and that's what feeds the flood warning systems database. This is a system that I developed beginning in 2003 or 2004 for the state of North Carolina. This is a system that has about 600 sensors in it now. It's statewide. It provides real-time inundation mapping and forecast for riverine, urban, and rural streams. What does the interface look like of this? At the bottom, you see a dashboard, and on the map, you see real-time flood inundations. That's the blue shaded area. So a system will not only show you that the river is rising, but it'll show you how far the floodplains are extending into the floodplain. And also, if you notice, you've got color-coded buildings. That's stored in the database as well to show the impact to the buildings. This is some of the requirements that we work with Norman. The Norman system will have very, very similar functionality, and that those inundation boundaries will be updated every 5 minutes. So what have we done to date? As Jason mentioned, we finished up phase 1 in the summer of this year. And really what the phase 1 project was a scoping or a prioritization. We looked at, we had 5 tasks in that contract, but the primary goal of that contract was prioritization of where sensors could be located, do a requirements analysis with city staff on to determine what they needed, and then rank those sites. How did we prioritize it? We looked at data and did a risk assessment. So we looked at every single crossing in the city and analyzed each one of those crossings with respect to a risk assessment. What goes into that is the risk of flooding. That's your risk layer. That's your floodplains. You've got your vulnerability, your assets, your buildings, and your critical infrastructure, and then your transportation assets, your roads. All those go together, and we developed a scoring system that looked at the hazard and the vulnerability, and we developed a numeric score for each location that could rank where you get your most bang for your buck by putting these sensors in. This is the slide on the map is a geospatial analysis of transportation routes, and the symbols there in the middle are critical facilities. This went into the database as well to help rank those systems, is what critical infrastructure or critical facilities are going to be at risk, and what roads serving those critical facilities would be inundated by water. On the right is some analysis that we did to help us prioritize locations. You see the blue area is the floodplain, or the approximate floodplain locations. Every building was analyzed around these locations, and the cyan or the light blue colored areas are roadways that would be flooded during different level flood events. And so those went into what we refer to as a heat map, which helped us prioritize 25 locations in Norman that are the best places to start for your sensors.
Thanks, David. We'll talk about a few more of the specifics, and then we'll open it up for questions. This shows one of our sensor proposed locations. It's not far from here. It's on Imhoff Creek, and it's where Imhoff starts to go underground for a little while. But the map that you see on the right is the type of information that you would see in real time. Now, what you see on the right here is the mapping of what it would look like during a 1% annual chance, or what we call a 100-year flood. Well, we'll have that same level of data for any flood. So no matter what does it look like out there right now? Well, we could go look out the window from here, but we would see which buildings were impacted. And you could also say, well, if it rises another foot, what's it going to look like? And you can use a scenario slider to find out what that would look like. And so at every one of our locations, you would be able to see this type of data. Another example, the 10-mile flat area had some areas that were very critical and ranked out very high. And again, you'd have that same type of information. Some of these sensors will have cameras on them, so you can see what's going on, as well as measuring the depth of flow, and then once we have that depth of flow, we can map it out in the area and see exactly what it looks like in real time. This is the results of that prioritization. Everywhere that you see a purple marker on this map are areas that we wanted to be able to install sensors. And again, part of that was prioritization, and part of that was the city saying, I know we need one here. Well, okay, that trumps any analysis we can do because of your known experience of where you have to go out and work. These can be changed at any time, and you can add to them at any time. You can always add sensors in the future. All that we would have to do is go back and create the data that needs to be done behind the scenes to help work with those sensors. I'll also point out there are two sensor locations on the Canadian River at I-35 and at I-44. That's data from the USGS. We wouldn't have to install any sensors there. We would take their information. We wanted to include that for mapping because those are areas where they actually give forecasts in advance and tell you how deep they expect the water to get and when they expect it to peak. And we can have that type of data mapped out in our system just like we would for all of the sensors you had in your own system. I'm not going to take the time I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all the details of these sensors, but this is what we're proposing to use. This is what the latest version of what David's team has been using in North Carolina. It comes as a prepackaged system, very efficient, very cost effective compared to what they used to be, and also very reliable. The city would be responsible for making sure these are maintained. We have a lot of lessons learned from the past of where we want to place these and how to avoid vandalism and that sort of thing. But obviously, our system will only be as good as the sensors that we can have out in the field and the ability to keep them running.
And I'd like to add one thing is the cost comparison between these and traditional systems. Since these are all in one system with the solar power, the radio, the cellular, and the sensor, they're less than $5,000 a unit versus compared to $25,000 of what the USGS made piecemeal together. So much more economy.
And it's one of the things that makes these types of systems, having a dense network, possible.
What is the typical lifespan on one of these?
Yes, I do.
We've been using these in Charlotte, North Carolina on their system. They have 110 installed for the past 3 years, and they've been getting really good reliability out of them. They've not had any of them fail or had to replace any of them. So I've been working with sensors like this for 3 years in one system.
And would you know if they've been damaged enough to be non-functional?
Yes, you have a risk of vandalization, but the key about it being all in one versus one where you've got a separate solar panel and a separate box and separate exposed conduits, that's a lot less likely to have vandalism.
I was
But there
thinking
has
more
been-
hail and tornadoes, honestly.
We haven't had any tornadoes, we haven't had any hail, but they are ruggedized, and you could expose some of the solar panels to hail damage, which is something that would be visible, and also on a dashboard you could know whether you were getting a charge on your battery from a voltmeter that's on your dashboard.
And there's 18 of them, is that what I counted?
Would we have 20?
25 about.
Yeah.
I think, no, maybe 18. It may be more like 18.
Is that
Correct.
the list of them
Yeah.
right there?
Mhm.
Okay. So 72,000.
To kind of add on top of that, I will say, one of the things with this tying into the emergency operations of the traffic management center, the plan is, and in the conversations we've had with them, like, they're literally going to have a separate screen with these up on it nonstop. So there's gonna be somebody looking at them daily, and if we lose communication with one or something like that, then we can send somebody out there to look at it, repair it. The gauges that we currently have installed in the city of Norman, honestly, I installed most of them 7-8 years ago. The hail and we've had very little damage by natural events. Like, they're pretty rugged, pretty tough.
I saw one that is located outside the city limits of Norman. How's that work?
That was the USGS one.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
Those
that
are-
includes theirs.
We would not be installing that sensor, we'd be using that within our network, using the data from USGS.
So how many would we be installing total?
Well, I think that goes back to it would only be those two unless we're also going to be pulling data from the sensors that are already out in the field that are done in cooperation with OWRB. I'd have to look at the list to filter out exactly how many we had to
Yeah.
install. I don't remember the number off the top of my
We
head.
currently have 9 gauges installed, so we're looking at 9 or 10 additional initially. Like I said, the beautiful thing with this system is it's modular. We can add to it if we identify something. And quite honestly, it's fairly cheap to add to it, all things
Okay.
considered too.
We can get you a detailed list of that later. You can go back. Thank you. So phase one was mainly scoping. What really does the city need? And get that identified so that we could come up with a cost estimate that we could go and pursue grant money to help fund phase two. And that's where we're at right now. And phase two, this is where we're going to go install the sensors, get them up and running, and build all the data sets for the back end, build the website. So you would have websites that the public could see in real time, and then you would have websites that are just for the city's internal use that have a lot more data associated with them. But obviously, there are a lot of uses for this besides just flooding, so whether it's emergency management, transportation, not just responses to flooding indirectly. When you start to think about the city participates in the community rating system, they can get extra points for having this type of system there. Whenever you want, if you want to go after, we've worked with the city a lot over the last 10 years, helping work on flood mitigation projects and stream restoration projects. When you try to do the damage calculations, to do a benefit cost analysis, to go compete for those FEMA grants, to win those flood mitigation dollars, this type of data is really valuable to use in that type of scenario. So if we have areas where we can go back and show for actual storm events, we had this level of damages, if those exceed what you can do just by FEMA standard calculations, we get to use those damages and can make us more cost competitive to compete for that work. So there's the emergency management folks are very excited about this and have already been highly engaged in working with us. We actually wrote an update to some of their plan and to how they would use this information, again, and the transportation folks as well. And as Jason mentioned, I think it's an exciting opportunity to partner with OU and probably the National Weather Service as they leverage this system and start to use it and do more. They can actually bring more functionality into you as well. I think once we have this system up and running and we get a chance to really dig into the data, I think we'll be able to work with the Weather Service to come up with some ideas of how we can use forecasts to start to predict where some of this flooding is going to be, so we can get it out in front of it even as fast as flooding occurs here.
Councilmember Schuler?
I'm just thinking about the implications that this has, the potential positive implications that this has on us talking about stormwater just broadly in our community. We don't have a stormwater utility. It's been a fight to get one, since we go out to a vote of the people to create a new utility. So I'm thinking that this is going to have great data for us to think about, play into our stormwater master plan and thinking about how do we develop potentially a utility, and being kind of critical and saying, hey, this is a problem and this is why. I'm just looking at Jason thinking I'm hopeful that this can feed into us having bigger conversations about stormwater.
Absolutely.
100% agree with you, Tim.
Yeah.
I think this can be a great outreach tool, and it's part of what you're talking about, to raise awareness and to justify what the needs are, especially if the city's going to go through. I think there's been discussions on updating their master drainage plan to get that in line as well. And so if you think about rolling a system like this out, getting the public comfortable using it to help you chase more grant dollars to do more flood mitigation. And then if you're on the back side of that, if you're doing a updated flood study and you are able to show, here's what all these needs are, how are we going to fund them? That's one way to fund them. It's not the only way to fund them, but that's certainly one way, and I think that can be part of that strategy.
I'm sure that you're getting ready to talk to us about timeline. I'm just thinking about implementation and kind of how long this will take us, because as I think about when could we get a stormwater utility back on a ballot, or kind of conversations about that, how long will this have until we can get the public using it?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So where we are now, we just turned in the SMART grant this couple weeks ago. The BRIC grant that we're partnering with MESHEC to apply for is due in December. Then it really becomes a matter of how long does it take them to, the BRIC grant that we got to do the scoping, we applied for in November of 2020, didn't receive the funding until February of 2022. So hopefully we're not looking at, over a year to find out about the grant funding opportunity for it. But once we have the funding, it'll take longer to order the equipment and start developing the software. But as soon as we have the funding, we can start.
So I'm just thinking about funding. Is there a way that we could move faster and use a BRIC grant to reimburse ourselves for the things that we've done, or do we have to wait until we are funded?
A BRIC grant won't typically pay for anything that you've already paid
Okay.
for. It will pay, not that, no.
Okay.
It's
But
great.
if for whatever reason we don't get the brick grant, or the other grant, council could consider this kind of program in your regular capital plan as well. But we're trying to avoid that. We'd rather use the federal money, but, yeah, it's really affordable. We're talking an implementation plan of about 320,000.
Yeah, just, thinking about how critical something like this is and,
You hate to wait.
time is of the essence, especially with all of the rain events that we have and the flooding. I mean, like just this week, we're getting ready to see more rain at the end of the week, so.
I think it's fair to say we've got at earliest probably 6 months, latest probably 12 months to get an answer on the funding. And I think safely to plan on another 12 months after that for implementation, testing, and get everything up and running.
So the
It'd be
long-
hard to beat 2 years from
2
from
years.
from today. Yeah, really, say
You could
January.
also, if I could add on the implementation, you could phase it in. So if you prioritize the purchase and the installation of the sensors, there is the sensor company has a nice, more like vanilla dashboard. So you could get the benefits of having all the sensors out there and some really just run-of-the-mill alerts from the system itself. But it doesn't have any of the intelligence of the mapping and the
Mapping.
everything.
Yeah.
But if you prioritized, first phase was procuring the hardware and getting them installed and telemetry built in, then you could benefit from all of that while the modeling is being done and the system's being built.
Yeah, I mean, that would sound really good to me if there's a way that we can phase it to like start being able to utilize stuff and then get the more advanced mapping and, all of that kind of stuff on a later date, with new dashboards and things like that. I don't know how others feel, but,
So you said that total cost was what?
320?
320?
Number was it 313?
Was it 313 is what was in the proposal, and that is to purchase the equipment and develop the database and things like that. There would be some other cost in terms of, management and things like that, but we're looking, in the mid 300s probably total. And again, scalable.
What of that is the mapping and the dashboard and all of that kind of stuff? Because like, if we've got 18 sensors at $4,000, that's 7,200.
Plus a little installation,
Yeah.
labor for installation.
Yeah,
Roughly $5,000 counting installation, I think is the number we were using in the budget.
so under 100K
And
for
so-
just the sensors and the installation of that.
The rest of it's building out the database. We do have some models available. We actually were the firm that updated the models for Brookhaven and 10 Mile Flat. When the FEMA study got updated, those models we will take and use. We just have to run a whole lot more range of flows so we get every half a foot or every quarter of a foot, we're gonna have an answer.
Yeah.
Instead of the eight answers that are in there now. So we gotta take all those models, run all those scenarios, clean all that data up at every one of these locations. And in areas where we don't have a model, we have to develop a model for a short piece of that reach. And then all that data has to be built into the database, and we have to build the dashboards, have a website set up, and so it just takes a little bit of time, and
Yeah.
that's where the money comes in on that side.
Yeah, and just know that, right now we're in the process of our comprehensive plan update, and that includes a stormwater master plan update, and like, I'm just thinking of how critical this kind of data could be for that process, and
Right.
it doesn't seem like we're gonna be able to get it for,
For
that.
We won't have this data.
no matter what we do. Yeah.
Even if we said, let's do it today, we wouldn't have that, we
Yeah.
wouldn't have enough data to feed into that process, unfortunately. But it's going to help us moving forward. And the thing with master plans is they're living documents, like they can change as we go. We can make them better.
Well, something I definitely support going forward with and figuring out how to pay for it, hopefully through grants, but if not, it's
So-
something I would probably support.
Jason mentioned that
Programming
he had some funding, that he's gonna be asking for some funding for us to help with the grants. We actually have a department within our company that helps communities apply for and manage FEMA grants. And so we've done a little bit of that work for you guys in the past too, and that's what that's referring to help go after the BRIC grant. And the deadline comes up in December for that, to get all that submitted into the state, and then the state submits it on to the feds, And the state gets a certain amount of set-aside money that they get to pick the projects they want to fund. And then if you don't make the cut on that, it goes to a nationally competitive project. We have had some success in the state. We helped the city of Tulsa win a $43 million BRIC grant last year. And so the first year of the BRIC program, there was no competitive grants that weren't in a state that wasn't on the coast, I don't think. There were also no red states that got any grants. But they corrected that in the next year and spread the money out a little more across the country.
Triple
So,
too, I think.
yeah, the funding tripled. That helped out a lot as well. And he mentioned it took so long to get the money the first time around. That was because they were still figuring out how to run the program. BRIC is a new program. It's only been around for 3 years. And so that I expect them to be more efficient in getting through the process and getting funding around. I don't think we're going to have to wait 12 to 14 months to be notified of funding on if we do win a BRIC grant.
One other thing that, as you consider this, is that for a city size of Norman, going with 20-plus sensors is outstanding coverage. When we did one for City of Roanoke, 2 sensors. About half the size of Norman. So you could take if something came up with your funding with the grant, you could take baby steps and do 5 sensors, the top 5 sensors. That cuts the modeling and data development down some, so it's not all or nothing. And then you can add sensors.
And the system it's not anything proprietary that every time you need something you have to call us. This data all gets transferred over into the city's RGS online system. Expanding in the future, the libraries are there, you're just adding another site and adding the data for that. It's just a matter whether you ask us or whether the city has the capability to add that in. Whether you partner with some of your surrounding communities, if you want a better read on what's coming from the north and the city of Moore has an interest of doing that, then we could partner with them and get assisted. If they want to pay for the sensor and you wanted to put it in through your system, if that helps you as a city and you want to partner, it's easily expandable in that way as well. Or the city of Oklahoma City too, for that matter.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Councilmember Nash.
How many aggregator nodes would we need to have?
Go back to that slide. This image is put out by IntelliSense, the company that makes these sensors, and you won't need any. This is something I have never seen tested in their software and their hardware. But what this is an example of is these sensors can talk to each other, and if these 2 sensors lost a cell connection, they could piggyback on this one's live cell connection to get the data back. I've never seen that work. Every sensor is going to have a cellular modem on it, so every sensor will have independent telemetry back to your database. But if each one can operate as a repeater node, but I would not rely on that. You've got good cell coverage, and it's not that you're probably not going to need it. So this is a little bit of a canned graphic by their company showing that you could go via cellular or you could go satellite, and then if you lose these 2, they can piggyback on each other.
Okay.
We shouldn't have significant dead spots in Norman. We don't have the terrain issues, and that shouldn't be a factor.
The 10 sensors we already have installed are all running on cellular. Occasionally we'll lose them for whatever. It's usually just a matter of needing to reboot a modem. But we have them like all the way across Norman, even way out like 108th and whatever. They all work. So.
Okay.
That's it. Okay. Any other? All right.
Supportive.
Okay, we'll keep us updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3 on the agenda is an update on the Porter Avenue Corridor Project and the James Garner Widening Project. Both voter-approved projects, one from Norman Forward, one from Transportation Bond. And with both of them ongoing, we've had definitely constituent questions about various aspects of it, the progress of it, and so thought it'd be a good opportunity to get an update on how they're both going. So Mr. Sturts is here with us, and go ahead and get going.
Thank you very much, Scott Sturts, City Engineer. Always appreciate the opportunity to come in and share where we're at and progress of our projects. These are 2 really great projects. As you said, they're both voter-approved projects. That's something I always like to point out to people. The Porter Avenue Streetscape was actually part of the 2019 Transportation Bond Package. And then James Garner Avenue Phase 2 was actually part of Norman Forward. And a lot of people don't realize that we actually have some transportation in Norman Forward. These two projects are slightly similar in that we actually went and applied for and got federal funding through ACOG. And because of that, there's some limitations and restrictions that we have. Because we've taken that federal funding, one of the things we have to do is ODOT administers the project for us, which means we lose a little bit of our control. And that's something that we personally don't like, but it's a good trade-off for 80% of construction costs on some projects. So that's kind of the things that happens. And in both these cases, we have ODOT is not doing that internally. They've hired third-party firms. So we have Atkins out on Porter Avenue. And then Smith Roberts Baldischweiler is helping us with the management out there on James Garner Phase 2. So there's a lot of oversight. We are out there daily. We look at our role here to be the liaison and to protect our citizens and our businesses and the people who live and reside here, because that's not always what they're the best at. So that's kind of what we try to do and really be supportive in that. I'll be pretty brief with these and be willing to answer any questions and discuss anything anybody has. But the Porter Avenue Streetscape was a really interesting project. Obviously, that corridor is not really pedestrian friendly. It's not ADA compliant. A lot of the issues that we had were a lot of those parking lots were open up to fully open across the entire frontage for cars pulling out. You can't really put a sidewalk behind cars backing out. So we had to find inventive ways to do that, and that was part of the driveway consolidation process that we did there. And I think that as you look on the south section, you see some places where we have some really successful implementation, where we were even able to do some places where we were able to save some spaces in front of those businesses. That was one of our big concerns, was loss of parking in the corridor. We did a lot of decorative paint, roadway, and we're doing lighting that's going to help access it. Landscaping. One of the things we heard most when we were scoping this from the citizens is we don't want a giant concrete world. Unfortunately, this was already a giant concrete world. So we put trees in where we can, but we got inventive. We added some landscaping planters that will be able to go out and be able to go out there and do some seasonal plantings, keep some things a little green, make it feel a little more homey, make it feel a little bit more like a nice streetscape. That's what our goal is. We're replacing the curb and gutter because a lot of it was non-existent or damaged or 2 inches tall, so it's going to look continuous all the way through the entire corridor. Traffic signals, the other things you can see here. And then when we're all done, we're going to come through, we're going to mill and overlay the entire, and then restripe it. It's going to feel and look like a brand new roadway. Just to give a quick update on where we're at, you can see this is divided into two portions. Just for anybody who's not familiar, that area there in the middle was the Porter and Acres intersection project that was also in the 2019 bond program. So if you want an example of what we're shooting for, that's it. It's all going to match. It's going to look like one continuous corridor. There was the Porter Street corridor study that was done many years ago, and they'd called out a really cool kind of Art Deco aesthetic, and we challenged our landscape architects to maintain that. And I think they've done a good job with it. We started at the south end at Alameda, working north back up towards Gray Street, where the first project started. That is substantially complete now. There's still some holes. There's some places they still need to come back and do some irrigation. They still need to come back and do some areas where they need to hook up the electric. And there's still some areas where we have some monument signs and some other the planters and some other items to come in. But the sidewalk is generally complete and usable at this time. And then we jump to the north, and that's where we're at now. We're going up the east side. We started down there at Hubert going north. Last time I was out there, which was the end of last week, they were up working north of Johnson. So making some good time. A lot of that was the removal. They're going back behind that, replacing those sidewalks. These are generally wider sidewalks. We're trying to go 6 to 8 foot wide. And we've got that nice gray decorative band, which was the color choices, the color palette that was chosen for the Art Deco.
And the farther you go north, the more room we have.
It changes. It's variable through the corridor because of the challenge of trying to maintain current businesses. We did want to go out and purchase a lot of right-of-way, start getting and really diminishing people's parking spaces or their usable area. So it's variable, but it's an interesting, it's always hard to go into a built environment and really come in and figure it out and get it laid in there.
Entirely developed on both sides through the entire corridor.
Maybe one lot, that wasn't, and I think it is now, before this project got started. So a lot going on. They'll get up to Robinson Street, they'll turn around, they'll come back down the west side, and then you'll start seeing all that final cleanup work, the nice stuff. But they got to get all that down first, and then they'll start working on those finer items. So I want to show you some pictures. Everybody loves pictures. That picture there on the left is actually right next to the transit center. With this project, we actually built that extra bus lane there. Early in the transit center, they came and said, we need this, can we do it? And we found a way to accommodate that. And I think it's a great addition, just a way to show that we work cooperatively with our partners within Norman. And then the one there on the right, I think is a really interesting picture. That's actually the old Gyro shop, right there at Main and Porter. And when we were doing the design, we reached out to them to try to work with them. They said, we don't really want the parking out front anymore. What can we do? Well, we were going to have to replace all of it to get positive drainage anyways. So we worked closely with that owner and came up with this design. They wanted some planter areas out front. So we left spaces for them to plant, and a great cooperation. They've come in and done the planting. And so you can see that we were able to try to work with property owners. We did a lot of extensive work down at Yellow Dog also to try to build something there that met their needs. So a lot of nice cooperative effort between the public and our project to try to really enhance this corridor and make it something usable.
That property owner has asked about the maintenance of that, if the landscaping that is being put in, will the city be maintaining it, or will each individual property owner be maintaining it? And in this case, they were happy to do that, and it looks nice. So they were kind of wondering about that as that does get installed.
Sure, and I think in this case that a lot of this will be their maintenance because they're installing this.
This right here, yeah.
Yeah, but there's other areas, the planters, we will be maintaining the planters.
Okay.
And again, I think that there's some changes as you go down through the corridor. Some areas where what's going to look like a street tree is actually on their property. And there's some that we're maintaining, like up by the hospital, where we're maintaining some of those trees that are along the street. They're actually on their property. So it's kind of a mixed bag. And we're happy to work through that with the property owners as we continue and as we get closer to completion.
Okay, Councilor Grant.
Speaking of property owners, have you had how many percentage-wise do you think you have pretty good communication with? Like, are there some absentee landlords in the mix?
We have actually, on a project like this, we work very hard to either figure out who the manager is, who the owner is, or sometimes if we need to, we work directly with who's operating that location. We've actually worked with each one individually. I think that most of the people in this corridor are actually Norman residents or Oklahoma City. So we've been able to have a lot of really good coordination. We do door hangers, and that has contact information on it. And we try to work very closely, especially on a project like this. We have to work closely because we're right up in their, literally, we're up in their business.
Yeah.
So, we're in there and we do, and I think that we've had very good relations with most of the property owners. If there is an issue, that's why we're there. We come in and we try to be that liaison to make sure that their needs are being met and not just being overruled.
And did you get requests for native plants in some of these planting areas, or?
We pretty much left that to our landscape architects. And anytime we're looking, we try to use native plants sometimes, but they are very well adept at using plants that do well in an urban area. The company who did this has done multiple streetscapes. So they're really good at knowing that this tree will work well when it's going to be getting roots that are starting to go under concrete, or it's not going to have a root that's going to force the concrete up. And so they do a lot of work, and we work really closely with that. I don't know that we really had any specific requests for plants through this corridor.
The only one I can think of was Terra Humara's had some landscaping they had already done. We didn't need to touch it.
We left it.
So we left that, and it's gonna be kinda in our right of way still, but it goes with their whole thing they have going on.
And do they maintain it, or do we maintain that?
They do.
They do.
Okay.
And in that example there, that property owner, would they, are they free to plant whatever they'd prefer in that space right there?
We,
As long as they're maintaining it?
yeah.
Okay.
And, of course, we've constructed it in a way where it's not going to interfere with site triangles.
Right.
So we're not worrying about site triangles. And so there's a lot of, they can do what they want
They
with
can
this
plant
space.
trees in there if they want, or whatever they might want to do, they're free to do
Yeah.
that.
They actually have one cutout on that site that we told them you can't bet anything more than 3 feet high because of the site triangle.
Okay.
But they were fine with that. They actually worked really closely with us during the design phase.
Sure.
And they got our landscape architect to send them the plants that we were gonna be using because they wanted it to tie in with the rest of it.
Okay.
So
That's great.
Hopefully that's what they put in it.
Okay. Well, that's one of the main questions I know I'd seen about landscaping, and I had known that that will be done after the streetscape and the sidewalks are all done. If, just kind of got to be patient, but that there will be
There will be.
landscaping up and down here with the boxes and
Yeah.
trees where there can be, and
And we want to be careful. We don't, we want to do all the landscaping at one time because the bonding on that.
Right.
And the maintenance, and you want to do it, and then there's certain times, certain plants have to be certain times a year. So we got a lot of constraints that we're working with there.
I don't know if I'd want to put them in while there's still a bunch of construction going in.
Your chances of it getting damaged are pretty
Okay.
good. Just a couple more quick pictures showing things under construction still. You can see there on the left, looking south from Rich, you can see the sidewalk, and then where that band will go, that colored band between the sidewalk and the curb. You can see the new curb. Really nice picture there. And then if you remember when we first were talking about this project, a lot of those intersections were wide at the intersection, which is more difficult for pedestrian crossing. And we talked about bringing those in and redoing those. And here is Rich Street, looking north on the east side, where we're redoing that curb return, that radius there to make it more walkable, or maybe we're just doing repairs to it. But a lot of work has gone into that too, and that was part of this project to make sure that those were all pretty well matching. Just want to show you a couple of the things that we brought forth when we were first discussing this project. This is that gateway image coming in from Robinson with the Art Deco wall with the wire and the metal fence there, and then the Robinson Street. That's all still in this project. That will be later. That will be coming, and there's going to be some other monument signs throughout to kind of try to set this aside like the special corridor. And then this was just one that kind of shows what this, could look like at night. With obviously we're not going to be planting a 40-foot tree out there to begin with, but so temper it a little bit. But this is what kind of the goal and what we look for the long term, with the street lighting making it feel like a very safe corridor for walking. James Garner Phase 2, I think, is a very
Any further questions or comments about Porter before we? Okay. Yeah, Councilor Nash.
On the Robinson, and this gateway
Mhm.
picture, is there a reason you guys didn't go with I think it's referred to as Cherokee Gothic, the other style of that we have on all the other signs, and
sure.
that weird brick kind
Yeah, the brick with the castellated look and the stone settings on it. This corridor and that corridor setting was set aside to be this Art Deco look. And this was the theme and the palette they really laid out for this. And so that's why we stayed true to that study and kind of stayed in that theme. Obviously, Lindsay Street is very heavy Cherokee Gothic all the way through. Many of our other corridors, Main Street, a little less of that. There was also a lot of discussion at one point about Main Street would have kind of the really reddish brick. Gray Street, a little different color of brick, and then this would have a different color. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces to try to give each corridor its own feel, its own unique features, without just being, Norman does everything Cherokee Gothic. But in this case, it was to stay true to that original study that was done, because it was very well received by the public and the property and homeowners in the area.
Okay.
Yeah, there's several Art Deco buildings that are
Yeah.
still in use along there. Friendly Market's one of them, and the Dairy's the biggest one.
Yeah, there's some really nice architecture. We wanted to accentuate that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a timeline, I guess, of how things are going with Porter and when we expect it might be wrapping up?
Sure. At this point, we're looking at it's probably going to be wrapping up first quarter. for the actual construction. But then because of the plantings, it'll be a little bit later because we want to wait till we get into the spring. You don't want to go out there and be doing plantings that you know aren't going to make it. You need to make sure you get to the right weather. So that'll probably be closer into the spring, and then we'll be wrapping this project up.
And when do you expect the traffic signal to go back up at Eufaula?
That is always the magic question right now.
Sure.
Delivery of traffic signals has become the enigma of all projects right now. They'll come in and once we get Johnson completed, then once we get delivery, we'll put both of those back up and get them back in operation.
Okay.
I don't have an exact time frame. I don't think we have a delivery date at this point.
The last estimate we got, which honestly we don't have a whole lot of confidence in from that supplier, but it was first week of November and we've worked with the contractor and asked them to see if they can accelerate that, and that was the accelerated deal for just getting Eufaula signals. So originally, that was about the delivery date for all of the lighting, but we've had to kind of work with them and say, okay, well, how soon can we get just the stuff for Eufaula, because we know that's a priority to get that back up and running.
It's so weird. It feels so weird to just.
It's fun. It's
Yeah,
interesting watching.
we're ready to get it back to.
Yeah.
It's going to be an improvement.
And that's the case with all the light poles that are
Yes.
be going in. Okay. One thing that I've heard as feedback is that because of the delay in the poles getting delivered, there are bolts sticking up out of the sidewalk, and some folks have just mentioned that to me. I don't know about how you guys, but of that being an issue potentially, just like a tripping hazard. And
No, that's something we need to look at, and we'll take a look at that and see if we need to be putting some. Anytime you have something exposed, we need to look and see if we need to be having protection on that.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up,
Yeah.
and we'll get with our partners at Atkins to take a look at that and make sure that it's a safe corridor.
okay, well, I definitely appreciate the update.
One minor
Yeah.
item I want to add, Mr. Chairman, Paul can confirm, but we are on this question of maintenance. It's a really important question, but we always get that from property owners. Some are happy to do it, some don't want any part in it. Where we are doing irrigation systems, the city will own and maintain those, and we pay the water bill. So we're not putting any of the hard irrigation systems on any of the property owners. The landscaping is something that we will do with this project. We hope that they will help us to maintain that. We'll do our best, but we do the same thing on Main Street. We have many merchants on Main Street that really help us with that maintenance.
In general, our landscaping that we are putting in within our right-of-way is planned to be maintained by the city.
Okay.
Parks Department will take care of that. We're doing things to their standards and stuff so that they have the materials and things to maintain that. Anything that was outside the right-of-way, like some of the planters there at Main Street that we have a picture of, those things are done kind of as benefit to them, so that's theirs to maintain.
So-
But we're running irrigation lines and everything to maintain. We have a lot of little planting areas like between curb ramps and things like that. In fact, we've had some kind of happy accidents where we got out there and trying to make an ADA issue work. A piece that was supposed to be concreted in, it actually worked better to not do that, and we've added some landscaped areas because it was cheaper, easier, and came up with a better final product to actually run another 10 feet of irrigation line over there and put a planter in. And we felt like that was kind of one of the goals. So anywhere we've been able to find those little pockets, but all that will be city maintained. Just the stuff that's kind of outside the right of way on there's where we put things back.
So that
for
one's
them.
done, and the Main and Porter, the one that was in the example in front of the old store there, that's done. That property owner has free range to do what they want there now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any final? Okay. All right.
All right. So James Garner Phase 2, this is a really interesting project. We've discussed it in-house. It's not often we build new roads. We fix roads, we redo roads, we widen roads, we redesign roads, but a new road, especially in an urban setting, is very unusual. We've been very happy with this project. I'm going to show a picture of this here in a moment, but just to kind of give you some things we're working on here. James Garner is that uninterrupted connection into downtown. So it'll be coming off at a modern roundabout just north of the water tower there at Robinson and Flood. It will come down around that water tower. A new bridge is being constructed. It's under construction now. Bring everything right down to the new library. And that was phase one. The area around the library is phase one. We progressed that because we thought it'd be a real shame to have a brand new library and then tear up all the roads. So we went ahead and did that first, which kind of made this project a little awkward, but it's worked out well. They'll be tying in there. And so that's what this project is in a nutshell. But there will be no interruptions to take it down to acres once you get onto it. There will be Legacy Trail ran next to it. There will be a separate Legacy Trail bridge, or part of the bridge will have the Legacy Trail on it, separate from traffic. So a safe way to be able to get down. You're only going to have to cross one leg of that intersection now instead of two if you're going that direction. A lot of other great items here. It's designed to be a two-way or a split road, but in places it's not because we just couldn't make that work. I think it speaks a lot better here when you look at the drawing. So you're coming south, that is Flood. They're on the kind of running diagonal, kind of there on the lower left. And you can see that roundabout there on the left side where you'll come off, you'll tie in. A wonderful art piece is being planned to go in there that council will be seeing here in the next few months. And we're looking forward to that being put in. You'll come off and you can see you go around the water tower, across that bridge over there over Robinson Street, new bridge. And then you continue on south and you tie in down there on the south end right by the new library. You can see the new Legacy Trail through there. And you can see what I'm talking about there. On the left-hand side, it doesn't have that center median, and it's because we just didn't have space to really get it in. One thing that we were really conscious about was there where we connected those local streets. We didn't want to leave people stranded. We didn't want people using them as cut-throughs anymore. So we found ways to be able to connect them together where they can be totally autonomous on their own, have two ways in and out for trash trucks, safety, and just if there's something going on, you can get out of the neighborhoods there. So that was a great thing that we were able to do here too.
I would note too that in a lot of cases when a new street like this is built in a existing urban area, it comes at the cost of a lot of potentially, going through the middle of a neighborhood and wiping out a lot of homes and things. And to my knowledge, there was no homes were taken for this project.
At
There
all.
was nothing in the way of it at all, actually.
In fact, basically, the only right-of-way we had to get was that triangle up there where the water tower is, and it was owned by OU. But there was actually a little section of it between the railroad and OU that was basically just, the road is all that would have gone there. And we had to purchase that, and then we worked to deal with OU to trade some land around to be able to get the remainder of it. But we did not have to get any private citizens' property, and we actually stayed off of their property completely for the construction of this project.
And the roundabout was a recommendation of ODOT, is that right?
We really looked at it, our consultant looked at that, and they evaluated it being a T intersection with just a stop control, just on the T part, or whether it could be signalized, and then the roundabout. And when we did the full analysis, the roundabout had the best traffic analysis. It was the best option, and it actually came in and it was very cost effective for this location, which a lot of people say that they think the roundabouts are much more expensive, but in this case it was actually much better. We had a lot of concerns about having another traffic signal right there that close to Robinson and Flood. So we were happy. We think this is a great opportunity here and a great use of a modern roundabout.
It'll help slow down traffic as it approaches Robinson. And first multi-lane roundabout in the state is what I understand.
We believe so. I keep telling people they can do them in Texas. We're okay.
Yes.
We got this.
And there isn't a sidewalk on Flood, on the west side of Flood going north yet, but we have a separate project.
There's a separate
where
project.
Legacy Trail will connect to that.
It will
to go
extend all the way from Robinson all the way to Tecumseh. That project is well into design, and we're looking forward to get that one started as soon as possible.
Also a federal grant for that. David Riesland is our project manager. That will bid in January. So we will be under construction on and that's a full 10-foot wide bike hike trail.
Yes.
So that will be under construction along with this one at the same time next year.
It'll be the same width as it'll be Legacy Trail type.
Yes.
Very similar to Constitution, the
Okay.
recent happened Constitution.
And I do recall the connections on the neighborhood streets being them not connecting to this was a big issue that I remember with them, was not wanting the through traffic to cut through the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Did you have?
Oh, no, I wasn't
Okay.
asking.
Okay.
Here's just kind of a couple of examples. You can see there on the left, this is looking north from around Himes. You can see that. One thing that we've done here that is unique, and other people are starting to look at it, and we did it on the first phase, is the roadway actually slopes to the middle. So the water, instead of going to the edge and straight into an inlet, it actually goes into the grass, and then it runs along the grass. And we're actually going to be putting in some rain gardens around those inlets to help collect some of that water, remove some of the water, get it back into the ground. Something really unique. You're starting to see it in other areas, but we're really excited about that. We think it's a great way to put in some low impact development, do something to benefit our stormwater with our own projects. And then there on the right side is University Boulevard. So this is where those neighborhood streets are connecting. You can see the James Garner over there kind of on the right side of the picture.
Yeah, I've driven down them both. It's nice.
They're nice.
Yeah.
I've taken the whip through there. These two pictures, they're on the left. They're down there. They're drilling the shafts for and they're placing the shafts there to build the bridge. So those are the piers that are going in there.
There's been a lot of comments on the Norman community pages about it. Just last night I was responding to someone on there about it. Project's being administered by ODOT, right?
That is correct.
Through ODOT contractors.
Yes, sir.
And so this part of the project would be there. Is there any known timeline for when the bridge part or this part, when Robinson will be fully reopened, I guess, to all 4 lanes?
Do we have that?
The timeline in the schedule is approximately 4 months to get the bridge constructed. So we've been at it for a month. I think they had a little bit of a delay because we found a storm sewer situation that we were unaware of, where the railroad had tied some storm sewer off of their bridge into it that was not visible until we dug it up, and that delayed them a few days. But I think we're still on track for that. So it should be, in February, I think, when they'll
February,
be
March.
finishing up. Now they won't necessarily have the roadway underneath closed for that entire period.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly when that'll get opened up, but worst case scenario, probably about another 3 months or so.
So just expect delays or plan ahead for it.
I come to work this way every day too. I feel the pain.
Okay.
And there may be some changes from time to time because we may have to reconfigure things, possibly do some details when they're hanging the beams over the roadway. We can't have traffic under it. So there may be some modifications that we have to do to how that maneuvers through there.
But those discussions are ongoing now, and we're trying to find the least impactful way to do that.
Right.
As you're looking there, the photo on the right, that's actually, they stopped the roadway before they get to the bridge because we really didn't want them driving cranes and large equipment over the new road. So they stopped it, and they'll finish that up when they do the rest of the roadway up to the bridge. Up there in the upper right, this kind of shows you where I was talking about the rain gardens and it's sloping back to the middle. Design we're really happy with. You can kind of see below that, you can see the 2 lanes with the divided. I think we're all pretty good with that. And the picture there in the top, just kind of a nice rendering of what we hope we can have there. And then there in the bottom is a little bit closer up picture of that roundabout. You can see there's landscaping, and then there's a spot in the middle for an art piece. So that's underway. We also came to council and spent quite a bit of time talking about the bridge aesthetics. Came back, had a few runs at it until we came up with something we were all happy with. And this is the final design. This is what's going to be put in place. Changing the landscaping there in front of the bridge just a little bit, but you can see the Legacy Trail and James Garner callouts on the beams. The Norman with the Firebird emblem for James Garner there at the top of it. James Garner, his signature actually up there on the bridge. And then a nice fencing. So it's going to be a nice fencing up there that's going to be something, it's going to be a really unique looking bridge, but I think it really picks it up at night. You can see it, those are backlit. These are also going to have the availability to change color. So you can do red for Christmas or whatever. So, really great project. We're really happy to get some aesthetics put in here on this bridge structure and then to be using the 1% for art to do the work up at the roundabout. And I think there's more work that we can do in the future along Legacy Trail too. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about either one of these projects.
We think the timeline is for the whole project to be finished, probably summer. or-
Yeah, this will be,
I think the end date's the end of April right now. Obviously depending on weather this
Sure.
spring, but it's, I think sometime in April, I don't remember the exact date.
So it
is
might
the
open.
Final completion.
Might open to traffic in the late spring or early summer.
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
And, obviously the roundabout construction is going to be another change in the way we get through it. It's phased to where the road's always open, so there'll always be traffic flow. But that will be a challenge, and then once we get that open, we'll get full flow through the whole area.
When do you expect that part to start? The roundabout?
That part will start after the first of the year.
That's the last piece they're gonna do, that's by design, so we don't have Robinson shut down and flood disturbed at the same time as much as possible. Depending on, weather, if they start getting close, we may have a little bit of overlap there, but our goal was to try and keep those separate, and that's how it's always been in the schedule.
Okay. What's the speed limit gonna be on this boulevard?
Right now, we're not planning on the boulevard,
Yeah.
It's
30?
35.
30 or 35.
I'd have to look.
Until you get to the library?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look at the plans for what was called out. I just don't remember that off the top of my head.
We should mention that phase 3, there's another phase that
Right.
was in the 2019 bond program. These guys are lined up to take bids on phase 3 as early as December. So we'll have phase 3 starting construction before phase 2 is done, theoretically. And
Okay.
phase 3 starts at Acre, starts at the library, and goes another roughly 3/4 of a mile south to Duffy.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
lots of construction in Fort Norman.
Right,
Messy,
okay.
difficult, but it's gonna be a big change.
I remember
Yeah.
considerable discussion about, the beautification pieces on the bridge and things. We did officially secure the okay to have the signature.
We
from
asked
the
that
estate.
question repeatedly and we were told yes each time.
Okay.
So,
I know
And then-
that was giving us heartburn at the
and-
beginning, like we want to make sure that
Actually,
the
yeah.
estate or, whoever
the
needs to
city
sign off on
attorney's
that.
office also made sure that we had
Perfect.
that.
Yeah, because we
appropriately
always thought that was a
dealt
really
with.
cool
Yeah,
feature.
I agree.
And there are streetlights on the underpass already, so this picture just is illustrating the new lights. So
Yeah.
when we posted it, some people were like, "There's no lights on the." There is. They're already there. Councilmember Grant.
Just because we're talking about phase 3, is it going to be finished by the end of April? Like, is it all?
Oh,
When would that be done?
No, it'll
That'll
probably,
be a year or so after.
Okay.
It'll probably start in March or April,
yeah.
and about a year
Right
later.
as 2 is finishing, 3 is picking
Yeah,
up.
they'll overlap a little bit, not by much, but we'll probably be really close. One will probably be wrapping up and starting up.
And what's the speed limit on 3, if you remember?
I'm sorry?
On the phase 3 portion? From
It
Acres
won't
to
change from what
Duffy?
it's today, which I believe is 25.
Okay, so still
We
20.
we won't change that speed limit because it's still going to be just a 2-lane roadway.
Okay.
So we won't,
And just to keep things interesting, Gray Street, 2A, will bid next month.
This month.
I beg
Oh, yeah,
pardon.
sorry,
Well,
it's still,
November.
it's not November yet. Yeah,
It's
sorry.
also an ODOT administered project. Phase 3 is a city administered project. We did not get federal funding, so just to confuse matters, keeps me often. But Gray Street, 2A conversion, will probably be under construction, again, assuming a good bid opening in November, award in December or January, again, probably February, March, starting on Gray Street, while we're also getting ready to start on James Garner Street. Really big activity in downtown that I don't think we've ever had at one time, but they just are all kind of coming together, just the way it worked out.
well, I think we knew they would probably, so
all that and,
we've had a few years to think about it and plan ahead.
yeah.
So it might be beneficial that we have maybe updates on those after the bids are done and it's ready to go. Maybe just kind of a last make sure everybody knows we're getting ready to go do this, so, okay. Okay, any final questions, comments from? Okay, well, thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Keep in mind
Appreciate
that
it.
Gray Street will have traffic signal poles on it, so when you talk
Sean.
about schedule, keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll change order phase 3.
Yes.
We're not having to replace the.
Yes.